Chapter 5: Strengthened accountabilities and clear routes of redress. We have set out a vision for a SEND and alternative provision system where decisions are made, collectively and consistently by partnerships, and informed by robust data and evidence. This will be underpinned by strengthened accountabilities for all those responsible for local delivery. We heard consistently throughout the consultation that current accountability measures are not effective enough. Many respondents felt that whilst the design of the current system and legal framework is right, more should be done to hold all elements of the system to account. They told us that if this is implemented, the support and experiences for children and young people with SEND would improve. And the system overall would be less adversarial for families. We agree that more can be done to make sure statutory duties are delivered. Parents should have confidence that their children's needs will be met. And that local systems are delivering in line with national standards, with proportionate and effective action taken where required. So that children and young people can achieve the best outcomes. Parents should also know that if they have a concern, it will be listened to and resolved in a transparent and efficient way. Our proposals are intended to work together to drive improvements across the 0 to 25 system. They are underpinned by strong local leadership and supported by a culture of effective relationships, mutual trust, and accountability. To enable children and young people to get the right support in the right place at the right time. To strengthen accountabilities and ensure there are clear routes of redress, one, we will publish a local and national inclusion dashboard from autumn 2023 to support the development of local inclusion plans. Giving parents improved transparency of local performance, informing decision-making and driving self-improvement across the system with ongoing updates and iterations in response to user feedback. Two, we will deliver updated Ofsted and Care Quality Commission, or CQC, area SEND inspections from 2023. With a greater focus on the outcomes and experience of children and young people with SEND and in alternative provision. 3. We will create a ladder of intervention for local areas from 2023. Greater powers for the Secretary of State for Health through the Health and Care Act 2022. and robust action for all where statutory duties for children and young people with SEND and in alternative provision are not met. To strengthen accountabilities across all parts of the system. 4. We will require every integrated care board to have a named executive board member lead accountable for SEND. 5. We will facilitate a more joined-up response between the Department for Education and NHS England. 'To improve outcomes and experiences for children and young people with SEND. 'Including social, emotional and mental health issues, and tackle systemic failings leading to significant concerns. 6. We will strengthen redress for individual disagreements by clarifying who is responsible for resolving complaints. 'And undertaking further testing of effective mediation approaches. 7. We will set up an expert group to support the development of a bespoke national alternative provision performance framework. 8. We will work with local authority, trust and school leaders to review processes and develop options for ensuring transparent and effective movement of pupils without EHCPs. Such as those requiring alternative provision to address behavioural needs. National and Local Inclusion Dashboard. The Green Paper set out a proposal to establish a national and local inclusion dashboard. That will present timely performance data across education, health and care. The dashboards will improve public transparency, help to enable better decision making at a national and local level, and drive self-improvement across local areas. The metrics in the dashboards will support an assessment of overall system performance and provide a basis for measuring whether we are achieving our mission of improved outcomes, better experiences, and a financially sustainable system. Ultimately, the dashboards will help to incentivise the behavioural and cultural change across the SEND and alternative provision system. To achieve maximum impact of reform. Respondents welcomed inclusion dashboards as a way of improving their understanding of what was happening in their local area. And as a tool to strengthen accountability. They noted, however, that there are significant challenges of placing additional burdens on already stretched services. and duplicating various dashboards that are already produced across local areas, including some which are shared with local delivery partners such as schools and parents. Where new mandatory data collections are proposed for the SEND dashboards, they will pass through the single data list procedure, which assesses whether a proposed data collection is genuinely necessary, non-duplicative, comparable, and coherent with all other data collections. Places a minimal burden on local authority data providers, and is fully funded in accordance with the cross-government New Burdens Doctrine. We also heard the need for caution in selecting the metrics to avoid unintended consequences. Such as increasing the focus on targets or the misinterpretation of data. As well as ensuring that dashboards are triangulated with other forms of intelligence to develop a fuller understanding. Feedback showed that all stakeholder groups were opposed to including provider-level data. i.e. for individual early years, schools, further education or post-16 settings, as part of the dashboards. Given other tools exist or are being developed that fulfill this purpose, such as school and college performance tables. We heard a range of views regarding the metrics to be included in the dashboards and the needs of the various users. For example, some parent groups highlighted the importance of the dashboards being easy to understand, and wanted it to focus more on holistic, long-term outcomes and appropriateness of provision. With less focus on the numbers of pupils in certain types of provision. On the other hand, local authorities and mainstream providers thought key contextual measures such as the proportion of children and young people educated in mainstream, were useful for planning with more functionality to explore data. To ensure we develop a tool that helps us achieve our overall objectives, considers the various users in the system, and sets out relevant and useful metrics, there is a need to fully test this. We will also seek to address the tensions in the requirements of the various users. Therefore, we propose to test an initial prototype dashboard from April 2023, with a view to making a fully public version available in autumn 2023. Our proposed approach to delivery in the financial year 2023 and beyond is set out in two phases. In Phase 1, which is Spring 2023, we will 1. Develop a prototype dashboard that will consist of core metrics using existing data to minimize any burdens. 2. Test the prototype through the change program from April 2023. 'To develop a greater understanding of who users are, what they are using the dashboard for, and their needs. Three, consider whether a fuller, more sophisticated dashboard is needed. In Phase 2, which is Autumn 2023 onwards, we will 1. Publish a first, fully public version of the inclusion dashboards in Autumn 2023. 2. Ongoing assessment to consider updates and future iterations. This could include new metrics and frequent data collection, supported by the long-term digitization of the EHCP processes. In addition, the Further Education, or FE, Performance Dashboard, proposed as part of FE accountability reforms in the Skills for Jobs white paper, will show skills-related outcomes for FE learners at provider level, including breakdowns by SEND learners. More detail about the FE Performance Dashboard is set out in the Department for Education's FE Funding and Accountability Consultation, which ran from July to October 2022. Subject to user testing, the FE Performance Dashboard is currently planned to go live by the end of the 2023 to 2024 academic year. Strengthened accountabilities to enforce statutory responsibilities and drive better outcomes and experiences. Through the consultation, we heard that current accountabilities are too weak and families have to battle the system to get support. The new national standards and local partnerships and plans will provide clarity in the system and encourage people to work together. But we know there is a need for stronger incentives and better enforcement for local areas, including providers, to meet statutory duties. Our measures seek to have an impact across the local system to enable the delivery of improved outcomes and experiences for children and young people from 0 to 25 years old. Families should feel confident that all parts of the system will be held to account and appropriate action will be taken to prevent and tackle failures. They should also feel confident that where issues arise, There are clear and effective routes of complaint, so that the right support is provided as soon as possible. Across local areas, we are strengthening accountabilities for local authorities, schools, colleges, and multi-academy trusts in the following ways. Updated Ofsted and CQC area send inspections. In January 2023, Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission introduced a new approach for area send inspections. These place greater emphasis on the outcomes that are being achieved for children and young people. Look more closely at children under 5 and those aged 16 to 25 years old, and include alternative provision for the first time. It will have 3 possible inspection outcomes, providing more nuanced judgments for areas to better inform a Department for Education response into local areas. Finally, as part of the framework, there will be a series of thematic visits each year, with the first focusing on alternative provision, publishing in autumn 2023. In 2023, the Department for Education will adjust its response to poor performance, in line with the new joint Ofsted and CQC area SEND inspection framework. So that it can act proactively when areas fail to provide the necessary support to meet the needs of children and young people. Including the removal of service control and imposition of a trust or commissioner on local authorities where required. We will develop a holistic new ladder of intervention for local areas, with a focus on creating financial sustainability and improving outcomes for children and young people based on evidence and data. Including data in the new inclusion dashboards and delivery of local inclusion plans alongside inspection outcomes. In addition, in 2023, we will evaluate the full evidence base of where statutory duties are met and not met across the local SEND and alternative provision system. To consider mechanisms to ensure we are able to be more robust with any partner that fails to meet their statutory responsibilities. Over the next 3 years, we will continue to support local authorities through several different improvement programmes to address concerns raised by Ofsted and CQC. As well as those identified by our expert advisors. These include improvement programmes such as targeted performance improvement providing support to areas in need, sector-led improvement offering peer-to-peer support, the SEND and Children's Social Care Joint Local Government Association Leadership Programme focusing on political leadership challenges in local authorities, and What Works in SEND, identifying and distributing good practice. The programmes focus primarily on local authority practice and provision by addressing the underlying cross-cutting issues affecting SEND performance. Including issues around timeliness and high needs budgetary pressures. The aim is to stabilise the system and build capacity and capability to respond to long-term reforms. In addition, the Safety Valve and Delivering Better Value programmes are supporting local authorities with the biggest deficits to reduce pressure on the high needs budget. Inspections under Ofsted's 2019 Education Inspection Framework. To be judged good or outstanding, schools and colleges must show that children and young people with SEND achieve good outcomes. The School Inspection Handbook emphasises that pupils with SEND have different needs and starting points. And inspectors will expect to see an inclusive culture in all education settings. All schools, colleges and apprenticeship providers will have at least one inspection between May 2021 to July 2025. For FE, Ofsted focuses on how well learners with SEND acquire the knowledge and skills they need to succeed in life. Through an ambitious curriculum based on high quality teaching and training. Academy's regulation and commissioning review. Will set out for the first time detailed descriptors for Academy trust strength, which recognise the value that trust-wide policies and leadership can add to individual schools. These descriptors include measures for a high-quality, inclusive education, helping to incentivise leaders to focus on setting the right culture for inclusion, and improving the outcomes of pupils with SEND and in alternative provision across trusts. The requirement for all schools to publish SEN information reports that was introduced in the Children and Families Act 2014 means that every school now has published standardised information about its policy for pupils with SEN. We will now explore whether the expectations about the contents of the SEN information report could be developed further to improve transparency. Attendance. The recently published Working Together to Improve School Attendance guidance sets out clear roles and responsibilities for schools, multi-academy trusts and local authorities to work together to provide access to early help services and ensure joined-up support for children and their families facing special educational needs, health or disability-related barriers to attendance. In working with their parents to improve attendance, Schools should be mindful of these barriers and put additional support in place, such as pastoral or curriculum support. The Department for Education will also work with health colleagues to strengthen lines of accountability through health structures by one, every Integrated Care Board, or ICB, will have an executive board lead for children and young people with SEND and safeguarding. Responsible for supporting the ICB Chief Executive in meeting the legal requirements of relevant legislation. Statutory guidance will be issued for ICBs in relation to the requirement for an executive lead role for safeguarding and SEND. Two, continue to review and bring together the existing functions of designated clinical officers and designated medical officers. This will provide greater consistency in the offer this role brings to the local SEND partnership. In relation to the health needs of children and young people with SEND. We will work to maintain the expertise that designated clinical officers and designated medical officers bring to the role, and consider whether designated health officer is the most appropriate title. 3. Facilitating a more joined-up response between Department for Education and NHS regional and national teams. To improve outcomes and experiences for children and young people with SEND and tackle systemic failings leading to significant concerns. Strengthened redress and mandatory mediation. Throughout the consultation, many families told us that they felt they needed to go through a lengthy, stressful, and often expensive appeals process to secure support for their child. The delivery of national standards, improved co-production with families, and strengthened accountabilities will make it clearer for families what support should be provided and by whom. These improvements should help to prevent disagreements arising in the first place. To help maintain positive relationships locally, we will refresh the model set for co-production at a local level, including clear and transparent communication with parents. This will set out expectations for how local areas should work with families in their area to engage constructively. And, as a result, prevent issues from escalating. We will also continue to offer training and support via our contracted delivery partners to send information, advice and support services, or SENDIAS. SENDIAS provide valuable support and free advice to families of children with SEND. And to local areas to resolve disputes early and at formal stages. We will work with our partners to promote the published minimum standards for SEND-EAS services. And consider with our partners whether the minimum standards should be incorporated into the SEND Code of Practice. When families feel that the service they have received from the local authority has not been good enough, such as deadlines being missed, there are existing routes to seek redress, such as the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, or LGSCO. To make it clearer for families how SEND-related concerns and complaints should be dealt with, we will amend the SEND Code of Practice so that it is clearer about who is responsible for resolving concerns. We will set out the routes of escalation if families remain unhappy with the way their concerns have been addressed. To inform this, we will look at what the role of the LGSCO, who consider complaints against local authorities, should be in a reformed SEND system. Additionally, the upcoming Academies Regulation and Commissioning Review will look at removing the duplication of processes between different bodies, improving the experience for trusts, schools, and parents. Data on complaints and appeals will be made transparent through national and local inclusion dashboards. And be used alongside other metrics to monitor performance across areas and drive improvements. For appeals about decisions regarding EHC needs assessments and plans, we proposed in the Green Paper to make mediation a mandatory part of the tribunal appeals process. The consultation showed some support for mediation and giving it a greater role to play in redress. We also heard that for mediation to be effective, it needs to be high quality. However, there were concerns about how making mediation mandatory could lengthen the resolution process for cases that do need to go to tribunal. And how this could delay children and young people with SEND receiving appropriate support. Mediation can help narrow areas of dispute and pave the way for an agreement to be reached. It is usually much quicker than going through a tribunal process. And can help to prevent the additional stress that can come from preparing a case for tribunal. To ensure that mediators understand the SEND system and are properly equipped to understand all views and appropriately guide families through the process, we will review and build on existing professional standards for SEND mediators. Local authorities will remain responsible for commissioning and funding mediation at no cost to families. We will further improve the quality of mediation and ensure it offers a good service to families by in Phase 1, which is autumn 2023, 1. Working with the Civil Mediation Council, the College of Mediators, other sector partners and families to review and build on the professional standards for SEND mediators. 2. Improving the information, advice and guidance available to families on mediation. 3. Evaluate the outcomes and impacts of mediation. In Phase 2, which is autumn 2024, 1. Clearly setting out what processes should be followed by education, health and care partners locally. 2. Setting out how the mediation process will be monitored to give families confidence in it. We will continue to explore options for strengthening mediation and will test and evaluate approaches further. Before deciding whether to bring forward legislation to make these strengthened processes statutory and make mediation mandatory. We will be more effective at using data on how mediation is carried out locally to inform intervention activity. And will take action where local areas are not participating in mediation as required. The SEND Tribunal is an important backstop for cases that cannot be resolved through early dispute resolution. Resolving more cases via early dispute resolution and mediation will enable the SEND Tribunal to hear cases more quickly than it does now. And improve the experience for families who need it. It will also enable more local authority resource to be focused on providing direct support to families, rather than on the administrative burden of preparing for tribunal cases. The SEND Tribunal also hears disability discrimination claims against schools. In the Green Paper, we set out that we wanted to explore how well the Tribunal's remedies in disability discrimination cases against schools were working in practice. Throughout the consultation, we heard calls for more guidance to increase awareness of schools' duties under the Equality Act 2010 to prevent discrimination. As well as some feedback that the remedies available to the Tribunal in disability discrimination cases should go further by enabling financial compensation to be awarded. We will seek to prevent discrimination from arising in the first place by supporting schools to comply with their duties under the Equality Act 2010. We will also further consider our policy on how disability discrimination claims against schools are dealt with. A bespoke alternative provision performance framework. Measures used to indicate the performance of mainstream schools do not work well for alternative provision schools. Pupils entering alternative provision will do so having disengaged with education and have significant gaps in their learning. And alternative provision schools will often only have a short time to work with pupils to address those issues. This lack of clear measures specific to the needs of pupils in alternative provision schools makes it hard for those schools to assess where they need to make improvements. To improve the quality of alternative provision based on our new vision for a three-tier service, we propose to introduce a bespoke alternative provision performance framework based on 5 named metrics. This would be designed to set robust standards focused on aspects such as increased attendance, attainment, reintegration into mainstream education, or progression to sustainable post-16 destinations. Respondents from alternative provision settings and their commissioners offered the greatest support and agreement to this proposal. There was also a positive response to setting up an expert group to help improve alternative provision data and performance information at both provider and local level. So that it supported the inclusion of alternative provision into area SEND inspections. We will set up this expert group as a next step in developing an alternative provision performance framework. Greater oversight of pupil movements. The majority of schools and local authorities act appropriately in facilitating the movement of pupils without EHCPs. For example, when children and young people require alternative provision to address behavioural needs. In most areas, local authorities and schools work well together to secure the right places for children. But this does not happen everywhere, and some pupil movement is opaque. A lack of clear oversight can lead to children being placed in settings that don't meet their educational needs. At the most extreme, they may be missing education altogether, putting already vulnerable children at greater risk. Feedback from the consultation consistently identified a lack of joint working as one of the main weaknesses in the current system. Poor partnership arrangements can also work against our three-tier model for alternative provision. Acting as a block to reintegrating children when they are ready to return to mainstream education. We will work with local authority, trust and school leaders to develop options for ensuring transparent decision-making on pupil movement with the child's best interest at heart. These will include arrangements for fair access panels, and will be in line with new national standards around the role of specialist and mainstream schools in making arrangements for alternative provision. Alongside this, where a school place has not been secured through fair access, we will look at how we can make the process of applying to the Secretary of State for direction to admit as effective as possible. We will keep the effectiveness of these changes under review, and we'll consider further powers around the placement of children if we need to go further to ensure there are safe and appropriate placements for every child. Unregistered alternative provision. We recognise the need to strengthen protections for children and young people in unregistered alternative provision settings. So that every placement is safe and has clear oversight. To find the right solution, we launched a call for evidence on the use of unregistered alternative provision, which closed on the 30th of September 2022. We have seen responses that reflect small, flexible provision being able to address individual need in supporting children and young people to engage with education. We have also heard powerful testimony from young adults who feel their life chances were transformed through attending non-school settings. In some local areas, there are strong delivery models, for example, with close management by local authorities or alternative provision schools. Of frameworks offering quality assured providers backed up by strong attendance management systems, safeguarding controls, and support for wider development. However, this approach is not enough on its own. It can only be effective alongside rigorous oversight of pupil placements and continual attention to the needs of the child. In the best systems, planning for the end of the placement begins at the outset, with a focus on the pupil's progression back into mainstream education. We are analysing responses to the call for evidence, whilst having further conversations with providers, commissioners, and users on potential implications of the proposals. Such as restricting the use of unregistered settings to part-time or time-limited placements. And how such placements should complement education in school. We will set out further proposals as they develop. Separately, for the limited and exceptional cases where commissioners deem full-time online alternative provision to be in the child's best interest, the Department for Education has launched an online education accreditation scheme for those providers. National SEND and Alternative Provision Implementation Board. The Green Paper proposed setting up a National SEND and Alternative Provision Implementation Board. to hold partners to account for the timely development and improvement of the system. Following feedback we heard throughout the consultation, we will establish the National SEND and Alternative Provision Implementation Board, comprised of parents, sector leaders across education including schools, early years and post-16, health and care and local and national government. The board will be jointly chaired by the Minister for Children, Families and Wellbeing and the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Mental Health and Women's Health Strategy. The purpose of the board will be to oversee the implementation of this improvement plan. It will be informed by data and sector views. The needs and views of children, young people and parents will be central to its work. And it will embrace the principles of co-production in how it operates. It will draw from and promote good practice to lead and drive change across the SEND and alternative provision sector. The board will also receive regular input from a wide range of stakeholders, including children, young people and parents, and from groups that have been set up to inform the development of specific system reforms. The board will publish updates on progress in delivery against this plan for children, young people and parents.